All right, everybody. Are we ready to rock?
Let's get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Alrighty. I will also note that Maddie was going to be here, but of course she, like she was saying in Discord, she was not feeling her greatest, so she's going to go ahead and take this week off. I will also note for everybody before we get into tonight's topic of discussion, at some point when she's available, we will have another permanent or at least rotating panelist by the name of N. Burrows, another Twitch streamer. So that is definitely something for us to look forward to. All right, everyone. This is going to be the 5th convening of the Ministry of Science. Today's guest of honor is our... I don't really like... You do a decent amount of bio Evo. Like, are you Evo bio proper? Like, is that the proper like field that you're in? Is that how you would describe?
Yeah, I would describe it evolutionary biology, but like there's no evolutionary biology program at Penn, so it's like, you know. But my concentration is in evolutionary biology. If you tell me anything but evolutionary biology, I wouldn't know. I would like, if you tell me anything about molecular biology, I'm like, what's that?
Hey, fair enough. That tells you how hyper specialized bio actually is. But yeah, as I was saying, our guest this week is evolutionary biologist and fellow Twitch streamer Evolozzy. So you already did a little bit of intro as to what your background is, but go ahead and give a formal spiel as to who you are and what you do on the platform.
So I'm Evolozzy. People call me Evo. I'm an evolutionary biologist by education. I'm about to get my PhD. And on the stream, I rant. I rant about the environment mostly. Like that's my real thing. I have been trying to implement more evolutionary biology content, which happened when I found Reddit, the subreddit evolution. It's gold mine. So I talk about like an hour of that kind of stuff, and then I'm this year, like in 2022, my goal is to switch my stream completely to open source. That means I'm ditching everything, including Windows. Like no Windows, like nothing. There won't be anything at the end of this year, which is not open source. Like everything will be open source in the stream, and I will teach how to make things to people. So like you can call me a variety streamer, variety educational.
One day they
content.
woke me up so I could live forever.
So that's what I do. Yeah,
that's pretty wild. I didn't realize going full open source was that involved, but like when you describe it, it makes perfect sense. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, my camera is open source.
Like your webcam?
Yeah. No,
we'll get to
camera
the Brett Weinstein in a minute.
It's a webcam that I made it myself.
Oh shit!
Yeah, from a Raspberry Pi.
Dude,
that's awesome.
How long did that take you?
Like it didn't take too long, to be honest. It like the codes are already written. Like people are contributing this kind of stuff all the time. And I was like, okay, I think I can make this. I just
those bits, bitch.
Bring the parts together, install the software, and it works pretty good actually. Like I think this is a very, very high quality camera for a webcam.
Yeah, I was gonna say your visual acuity is spot on. Like it looks like a DSLR.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, now they are trying to write codes to make this like 4K. Right now it can only work on full HD, but like it can support up to 4K, and they're trying to write the codes to support 4K. So that's common.
Damn. Well, at some point I might actually hit you up about this because my webcam just does whatever it wants. So I might actually be interested in finagling what you got.
You have Logitech?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
C920?
I think so, yeah.
I have a Brio.
Brio is pretty good. It's a
I just
good
haven't
webcam.
figured out the correct light balance.
So I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, neither have I. I've got a Brio as well.
I just bought the same Logitech, I think, that Homozygoat's got. So
yeah, I mean, the
and it looks a
C920 is
lot
okay.
better.
Yeah, I will also say, like, you definitely are coming through a lot more clearly as well.
I don't look like I'm a vampire all ashy. I mean,
I mean, we are academics. It wouldn't be surprising if we did look like ashy vampires. Anyways, we digress. What we really wanted to get into tonight, and this is definitely why we wanted to have Evo on here, is the recent controversy
PYT, give me
around
those
the
bits,
death of
motherfucker.
E.O. Wilson and his legacy, both scientific and otherwise, as well as sort of bringing up the notion of scientific racism, which has been something that obviously we've been dealing with for a very long time. But I'll go ahead and just kind of give us a conversational primer here. Very recently, the evolutionary biologist known as E.O. Wilson, he passed away December 26th of last year. So actually, I think
died.
all right, fair enough. Yep, he died. He was pretty damn old too. He was very much known for a lot of his contributions to ecology, taxonomy, evolutionary biology, but also he kind of had this darker underbelly to his legacy, which largely involves the curation and promotion of scientific racism. He came from a school of thought of biological essentialism, where basically genes determine everything. There's no nurture; it's all nature. You know, especially people of certain skin colors. That was a very much a belief that he held, and he also upheld other scientists in the field who shared those beliefs as well. So, I guess maybe to start us off, Evo, tell me, like, or I should say, tell us, in evolutionary biology, right? Like, this is a pretty recent controversy around people trying to separate the good from the bad in his legacy. But like, how common are these beliefs in the first place? Like, are there, is the entire field a bunch of racists? Are there just like a couple of people? What's going on?
Okay, what era are we talking about? Like, today.
Let's start with today.
I think today it's like, the old people will be old people in evolutionary biology. They will be like they will defend each other and all that stuff. It's kind of sad. But the young generation, like nobody believes that kind of stuff. Like if you look at the professors who got their professorship after maybe like 80, 90, like it's completely different. I think I would put the barrier to 90 maybe. Like after 90, if someone got their professorship, it's very like very different than how it was in 50s. So let's put it that way. Like nobody believes that kind of stuff. But then, once in a while, someone will like Razib Khan, someone will come out and do like start saying shitty stuff. It is the way it is. Like, science is kind of open to everyone, and some people hold disgusting beliefs as they grow up, and they cannot get out of their like disgusting, groups, and they just become disgusting people. At the end, it just is the way, unfortunately. And it's also like, I think like this whole conversation like goes to how the how the scientists like become scientists, and we should consider this like from very early on to today. Science is becoming more and more open to and more inclusive, like as we progress. But is it completely inclusive? No. Is it completely open to everyone? Not really. It's still a privileged place to be in, and you need that privilege to come to like the point where you can become a scientist. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think still it's not super inclusive, and that creates these kind of problems more often than not, if it makes any sense. Yeah.
It might be helpful if we kind of describe what sociobiology is for folks that may not know. I don't, because again, I don't really know the audience all that well, but
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I was heading next. What pioneered E.O. Wilson's legacy was the publication of a book called Sociobiology. I think this was published in 1975, if I remember correctly.
You should be right.
And this is basically where he reduced all human behavior to genetics, which largely provided people who already held those racist beliefs sort of a veneer of scientific justification to keep believing what they believe. And that seems to, at least to some degree, have continued to like perpetuate to modern day. So, you know, I think all of this got like reignited recently when, after E.O. Wilson died, somebody wrote an article in Scientific American about his legacy, both the good and the bad. And they had the nerve to bring up the bad, which started the firestorm when all of the people who agree with biological determinism read the article, such as one Razib Khan. So, there are a couple of people. I'm kind of following the mind map that Buenabuen so kindly put together here. I know, Evo, we've talked about Razib Khan before. Can you maybe like give us a primer as to who he is and why we're even like talking about him? Is that possible?
Like without cursing, it's not possible.
You can
fine.
curse. Swearing is a-okay here.
Yeah.
No slurs. No Twitch
he-
TOS violations.
Yeah, he is a fucking racist who claims to be a like science communicator. Actually, I'm not sure. Did you find out if he got his degree or not? He was a PhD student in genetics at one point, but I'm not sure if he got his degree or not.
I couldn't find anything about that. It seems like he only has a bachelor's, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he didn't get his degree or something. That's like, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, you know, the people come to a PhD and leave PhD all the time, and you know, like academia is a pretty toxic place if you look at the whole statistics and stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with him getting not getting the degree. But the way he is acting is like, you know, he is acting like he has the degree. That's kind of the problem, like where the problem starts. And he is well liked in some like by some people, let's say, who are biologists. And I don't know if you have have any of you seen the blog post by Jerry Allen Coyne? Do you know Jerry Allen Coyne, by the way? Any of you?
That
sorry.
name sounds very familiar.
Jerry Allen Coyne is one of the leading scientists in like evolutionary genetics, I would say. He did a lot of work with Drosophila melanogaster, and like he did a lot of work with a lot of things. And he was a professor in University of Chicago when he retired. He has been retired for like quite like, I think it's been maybe 10 years or maybe more that he has retired. And you know, he's well liked, respected in the field. But he came in the support of Razib Khan and attacking the article. Let me share that I'll find the blog post and share it on the chat. I think that might be helpful. They like, when I read that, I was like, okay, you know, there is a problem with the Scientific American article. And then I went and read the article, and I was like, oh yeah, I think there's a problem with the Scientific American article, that not a lot of people know about the like E.O. Wilson, his legacy, sociobiology, how it is racist, how does this connect to the book, the infamous book, The Bell Curve. If anyone knows, like, you know, the Bell Curve is a book from '94.
I recognize E.O. Wilson's name now.
So it is by Herrnstein and Murray.
Yeah, it's Murray in particular.
Yeah, Murray in particular. And this book is like, wow, you know. it is not just racist, it's also classist and everything. It's just it's a horrific book. And like the article, the Scientific American article, like, gives reference to all of these, but then doesn't give anything that is really racist in the article itself. So in terms of, like, I'm a science communicator, but like when I look at these things, I tend to look at them from a science communication point of view too. From a science communication point of view, that Scientific American article targets only one group of people, who are evolutionary biologists and who know what's going on in the field, who are very well read in the field. If you see an article like this, I cannot think that, you know, J. Ellen Coyne don't know what she's talking about. J. Ellen Coyne is being a bad actor here. Like, you know, he actually knows what they're talking about. But then, like, he is choosing his side with E.O. Wilson and Razib Khan, and, you know, that just gives you, wow, you know. And I was like, oh, I have drank with this guy. Like, you know, we like I met with that guy, like, in Turkey. He came as our guest speaker. And, like, you know, that's how I come to know him. Like, you know, and he's like, I thought he was a really cool guy. He is a really important book in the field, Why Evolution is True. That is still a really good book that people use to teach evolution to people who are, like, you know, creationists and stuff. Like, it's been a good source. Then, like, you know, this whole, when you start thinking about all of these, they start to connect, you know, like there are so many controversies. I get sidetracked, and you know, when I start talking, it's impossible to stop me. So stop me, just stop me.
Yeah.
Okay, Evo, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Can you back up just a little bit
Mhm.
and tell us what is evolutionary biology?
What is evolutionary biology?
Yeah, how does it differ from your regular types of biology? You've got a sociologist here and a sociologist undergrad sitting right next to you on screen. And me, I'm an interdisciplinarian, so I dabble. And you got Marcus, who's a molecular biologist. How are you distinguished from the rest of us slobs on the screen?
Okay, evolutionary biology is the branch of biology where we deal with how species and populations change over time. And this is like, it's not just from a paleontological point of view where you look back and say, oh, there was this species became this species. That's not just the like, that's not the idea. We are trying to understand the mechanisms that are acting today to today's populations too. Like, my research is interested in how how, like, long range migration events can change the dynamics of rapid adaptation. Now, like I put another word there, rapid. So rapid
Right.
adaptation means like, when also like this is kind of the in general people think that evolution happens slowly, but we know it's not always the case. So sometimes it happens very fast. And in my research, we found it can happen within 5 generations. We see like a considerable amount of change in just 5 generations. And
what types of changes, though? What types of changes are you talking about?
I am mostly interested in, like, when I look at the changes, I care about the phenotypic changes more, because phenotypic changes, like, if you think about like the how evolution works, so there is the genotype, which is coding some stuff, but genotype being there doesn't mean it will be in the phenotype.
Right.
What's in the phenotype is directly in interaction with the environment. So if there is selection, the selection is acting on phenotype rather than genotype. Genotype is like just, it's there, but it's not an active part of evolution, like if it makes any sense. So like the real interaction happens between the phenotype and the environment, and if there is selection, the selection is on phenotype. So I care about these phenotypic changes more than the genotypic changes. The
in
way
people?
not in people. Like I work with fruit flies, so I work
Drosophila.
Drosophila, yeah. So yeah, we look at the changes in phenotypes in short time, and in my research, what we did was we just get like 3 geographically distinct populations from Maine, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and I made mixes of Maine, Pennsylvania, and Florida, Pennsylvania. Then I looked at their phenotypes changing over time in 5 generations. The way we make sure that it's not like just environmental change at the end, what we do is we let them change for 5 generations, and then we put in different environments, and then we put them into the same environment for 2 generations to get rid of all the environmental effects that there might be. And we look at their phenotypes after that time. So like we let them change in different environments, then we put them in the same environment, and we look what's happening in these different populations. And we found like a lot of change in 5 generations. It's a very short time. Like so that's kind of like evolutionary biologists. That's what I'm trying to come to. Evolutionary biologists today are trying to understand how the species change over time, but like how can we use this information with today's populations? That's kind of our real goal.
Right. So if I were to kind of summarize what you're saying, is that we can observe changes over time in terms of the generation of a fruit fly, right? Which is how long? What's the time period of a generation of a fruit fly?
So like the fastest group always goes around 14 days.
All right. So 14 days for a generation. And so we don't want to, just say that these types of things are, applicable to a human population that is one species and takes many more years for a generation to we're a little bit more complex, I would say, in the way we relate to each other, that we probably can't make the same fruit fly that we can make about a human, right?
It's complicated.
A true scientist.
in terms of the mechanistic principles that you're looking at, the actual kind of principles of change affecting phenotypes and generation and those types of measurements.
It might, but
Right.
it might not too. So it's like when we look at the like, you know, Marcus can tell you too. When we look at the anything in biology, like nothing is consistent between species almost. Like if you go a bit from one species to the another species, the environment changes like a lot.
Right.
So it's with the fruit fly research, our real goal was to find how the climate change will affect these species, and that's how we connected like all of these dots. Like if there are species that have very short generation time and their numbers are declining, can we find ways to like use evolutionary rescue for these species? Evolutionary rescue means bringing some genes and saving a species from extinction, like by increasing their gene pool. So that like
Right.
our research started from that. Now, is that applicable to humans? Not really, because I think humans have less like humans are way more connected than fruit flies, I would say.
Yeah. And on a species level, you can't really make the claim that humans are going to adapt in the same way fruit flies would adapt in significant ways in 5 generations. You can't apply that to individual humans. You can't apply that to groups of humans. We're talking about species levels events, and that's what you are looking at. You're looking at species level events, and you're trying to extrapolate and compare some of the things that you understand about different species at that level.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we could say that, yeah.
So I think, would you say that the people who take some of these theories that are evolutionary biology theories, misapply them when they do something like race realism?
Exactly. So that's what's happening. That is like I think that's a good connection to our like conversation. Like people when like when they think about these, like when you're taking any kind of information in biology, you have to make sure that everything matches. Like, you know, you cannot use a theory with so many like assumptions to like and use it to another system where assumptions like do not like you know assumptions are not met. So that's a big problem. That's a big problem of the current research too. Like, well, sometimes you read a paper and they use a method, a statistical method. You look at the statistical method and the assumptions, like you say, for this research you cannot make these assumptions. How did you use this? But people still, you know, use, because it's all about the 95%, you know, like confidence interval. If if I meet 95% confidence interval, I think that's good. But it's not. It's like there are much more than that. So it's like, and like, yeah, race realism is simply that, like win, yeah, 100%.
A misapplication of species level data to smaller groups of populations.
Yeah,
and different species entirely.
Yeah. And humans are very well connected as a species, like super well connected species. Like we, you know, I'm an example. I told that to Marcus when we were together. Like I'm an example. I was born in Turkey. Now I'm in the US and I'm living in the US. I'm married in the US, and that's that. Like we just move around, and we love to move around. Like
we're
not
species.
all of us. Yeah, and that makes us a very well connected species as a species.
Could we
could you
draw
go ahead, Gremloe.
perhaps an example of this misuse of the of this application to any kind of contemporary figures? Anyone like maybe historically? Yeah, I know we mentioned the
I
bell
have
curve.
two
Okay.
that come up in two very different classes. So I talk about it in criminology, in this like quest for the criminal gene, and the one area that I think is really fascinating to me, even though I'm a sociologist, is there's a couple of people doing studies of brains, and they found that there's some overlap between uh, between the brains of certain killers. Often is who they're looking at. Um, but I've noticed something. The good evolutionary biologists are the ones that like don't say that it's a one-to-one correlation. They kind of leave some wiggle room open with their theories and their studies. But the other area I see this stuff come in is the sociology of sport, right? So, um, you get a lot of people that say, um, well, of course, black athletes are, dominating the field. They're more aggressive. They are more athletically prowess. And
Fast twitch
there's
muscle
actually,
fibers, like that kind of shit.
yeah, and that's actually a recent, like there's been a recent book come out called The Athlete Gene, where someone he wrote. I mean, the book, the title says it all, right? He's basically looking at, do certain people from different countries have some kind of athletic um, ability, and he was all over the news. Here's um, the link. I put it in Homozygoat's chat, and here it is in Gremloe's chat. Um, and I use that clip in my class to kind of open up the conversation to the students. But yeah, Evolozzy, like, I am kind of curious. I know this is maybe kind of selfish, but I am kind of curious, like, what your thoughts are about like the criminal gene stuff and some of these brain scans. And if you don't know, like, I know not all of us know, you know, this stuff, but I don't know if maybe you could comment. I'd be real interested to pick your brain.
It's a really good question. So like, I wouldn't consider, like, I would say that, yeah, I think there is some biological determinism. Like, we were talking to Marcus on my stream too. Like when I'm looking at the cats, I have two cats, and I know when they are going to poop and when they're going to pee. If they are peeing, their butts are down. If they're pooping, their butts are up. So this is like this is something deterministic, because they want to keep their butts clean from the poop, so they keep the butt up when they're pooping. So this is like, if I look at the humans, I would find similar things. Like when I go to the toilet, I tend to sit or like squat or something to poop. Like that's the way we poop as humans. Like I don't know if there anyone pooping in different positions, but I don't know. Like that I found these two the most comfortable, and I do this
Wait a
all the
second.
time.
Are you saying you're really a cat boy? Is that what really this is all about? Just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
So yeah, that yeah.
Confirmed.
So like, but it's, or like when you look at the babies, when babies, like, they when they're hungry, they will cry. So this is deterministic, and I think it should be in the genes too, like, because there is less going on at that point in terms of the like background and all that stuff. Like I would say maybe there are some genes out there that would make people like more aggressive than the others. Like maybe that. like not criminal, but like more aggressive than the others. And like maybe there are mental illnesses that we don't know about, which like leads to like these serial killer behavior and all that stuff. We don't know. Like like because when we go back to like the serial killer issue that is brought up like very common. So like maybe there are stuff about that, but here's the thing: I don't think there is a possibility in the short term and like I don't know in coming 100 years. I don't think we will be able to like find them. Like I don't think it's possible. First of all, there are not enough serial killers in the society to work with. We won't have the data we need from that group. So if we say serial killers are real, like they have criminal genes, we don't have the data. We won't have that data from them. For the rest of the society, it will be most like possibly upbringing. So if someone is, let's say, more aggressive than the others, like we know from animal research, some animals are more aggressive compared to the others. That is a trait that might be used for many things. It can.
Can't you breed, like, I'm just thinking like again, how much of it is nature versus nurture, right? So can't you like breed that out of animals? And so wouldn't that raise the question of how much of this is an evolutionary trait versus something environmental?
So yeah, that's where I'm coming. Let's say some individuals, let's say there is a trait. Like I always start with the like making an assumption and working with the assumption. Let's say there are individuals who have like aggressive trait. Those individuals would be very successful football players because they're aggressive, right?
Okay.
So it's like being aggressive is not necessarily a bad trait to start with. Like it might make them more competitive in like different environments. Like let's say that's the trait. So the nurture comes at that point. Like if the trait is being aggressive, nurture comes and makes that person the person they are, who is a football player. And nurture can make someone criminal because they don't have the social like structures around them to support them when they are growing up and when they need the most help. I don't know what like if that makes any sense. Like they have the same trait, but they go completely different ways. One of them becomes the maybe most successful football player. The other becomes like criminal. The same.
Hey, that's actually a really good point, right? About how our upbringing can channel us down these paths and societal structures and whatnot. And you represent the best in your field because I have not even heard you make really one statement that's an absolute. And a lot of these like fraudsters in this field make so many absolute statements, and it's just baffling.
But the real problem here with the race comes when they start to like tie these to skin color. Like at that point, like I'm like, there are 23 there are 23 chromosomes, and there is something called crossing over. So fuck off from my face.
Oh man, that was harsh.
So, yeah, like it's impossible almost to keep these genes if they are connected somehow. Like let's say they are connected on the chromosomal level, right? Like crossing over will separate these genes. Like it's impossible. Like it's like that's like if someone with no biology degree makes this kind of a comment, I would say, all right, I understand. You have no clue what's going on with the chromosomes and genes, and you just don't understand, and it's the way you are. But like someone with biology degree, like biology degree, I'm not looking for very high. Like biology degree, I mean, someone who could graduate from like a not even average, like a sloppy biology department in anywhere in the country would know this is happening. Like when do we learn about crossing over to start with? And when do we learn like we have 23 chromosomes?
Well, I mean, even if you want to start busting out the genetics, I mean, it's even more complicated than that. Like if you want to talk about the nature versus nurture question, which is really one of the like central points at the heart of this issue, right? How much of what people do, their behavior, their achievement in society is due to what environment they were brought up in versus the contents of their DNA. But even then, like the whole nature part of it, it's not that straightforward. Like your environment can change your genetics. It could turn genes on or off, and then your genetics could compel you to do something that modifies your environment that could then have this back and forth, right? That was something that Lewontin very much brought into the field of evolutionary biology, sort of in response to this like upbringing of the sociobiology movement from E.O. Wilson. Was it's a lot more complicated than we realize. And I think a lot of what you're talking about too, Evo, like there's a big almost like pop psychology angle to it where people are like, well, yeah, this person is clearly more aggressive because of their genes and not necessarily, something about the people they hang out with or the environment they were raised in or
Right.
places where they spend time. I mean, it seems almost very like Jordan B. Peterson-esque, where people are invoking all sorts of wild claims about behavior and saying, oh, well, it must be the genes.
But don't people think Jordan Peterson is the smartest person on the face of Earth?
He's
Aren't
the
there
most
people?
profound thinker of our time.
Well, we can talk about his takes on climate science later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He is very profound thinker. Yeah, I would say he is very profound. Like not in a good way though.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, he's always been my hero. You know that.
So okay, that was one question from Miss Frizzle. Like the examples of rapid change. Like I will give one example from fruit flies. Like their generation time, like their development time changed. Like between two groups, the development time changed almost one day. That's like crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not really like when was saying earlier, like any sort of effect like that, environment on gene on environment effect, like we can't even really like capture that like ever sometimes in some people. Like there's probably so many different things that happen and we don't know if it's nature or nurture that we don't even like realize are happening. Right. It's very difficult to like reduce human biology to this.
Yeah. As soon as a human is born, the human is like surrounded by so much information, and like the babies, they are like they are information sponges. They just soak everything in all the time, like 24 hours, like most possibly. They are like the babies, they are really amazing machines to soak information. Like think about all the things we know about life and how much of that we are bringing from our childhood. It's an impressive amount. And when we look at the kids, like between generations, the kids tend to have more knowledge in the ages they are, like one generation after another. One generation, like when you look at a new generation, you're like, oh, I didn't know these kind of stuff when I was 6, but now the 6-year-olds know a lot of stuff because they're surrounded by that information and they're just soaking in and soaking in and soaking in, and that just changes how much they can learn in their lives. So it's an interesting thing. That's why, like, with humans, there's no way we can do these kind of studies too. Like, it's impossible.
Right.
Definitely
We're talking about information changing, not necessarily human biology at a fast rate, but human cognition and the way we think and the way we understand things and the explanations we give in terms of our theories about, what does race mean? So far as I can tell, biology has kind of completely decided already, dismissed any dissent, that we are one species. We are not different species. We are one species on this planet. And
like I would go like further. Like, I would say we are almost one population.
Yeah.
Like, so there's this idea, which is like, we thought the fruit flies were like this. We think they are a single population and they have no local adaptation. They just, like, the population size of fruit flies shrink during the winter and expand during the summer. We thought they were coming from a single population in the past. Now we know it's not like necessarily true. There are local adaptations we see in different geographical regions, but like, for humans, our population doesn't shrink and expand. It just expands, and when we are expanding, we mix. So we are actually a single population that's expanding all the time, and we are mixing with, like, different groups. But the rate of the gene flow is so high. Gene flow is the migration rate. Is so high that, like, our populations do not distinguish from each other enough.
Right. And I think what I'm trying to say is that people take that and misunderstand it, that they try to apply this biological understanding of things to the meaning we make of things, right? And the theories and everything that we do and the things we're trying to explain here tonight are all cognitive things. They're not biology. They're an expression of our biology, obviously, but they're not biologically based. They're socially and culturally based.
Correct.
And and it's we run into these problems where we have an entire domain of science saying that we are basically one species, and you're going further saying we're one population, and yet we have requirements for these antiquated social abstract concepts of race and having to account for that in biological research. And so I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, is like, why are we doing these things in conjunction with one another? Or people automatically make that connection. They must have to do with one another.
Right.
And I don't think that's true. And how do we explain that?
I would even
nobody knows.
Yeah, I would even add on to that. How do we see these kinds of these organizations of science around evolutionary biology on the legislative level? What kind of where are the politics behind it? Where do we see that affecting our bodies of government?
Bodies of government with evolutionary biology. It's like, you're asking like a very, very hard question to me. But here's the thing, like, the scientists have little impact on our governance in general, like especially the good scientists. Let's say let's make that distinction, because there are bad actors and there will be bad actors. They like the scientists have little impact on the governance, and most of the scientists who have an impact, my cat is just he wants to be part of this.
I
can
couldn't tell if it
imagine,
was a
right?
huge cat or if he was just really close behind you.
He
Kitty's
is a
dream.
very big cat.
Okay.
Like I can show how big it is.
Oh.
Come here.
It's Garfield.
Oh my god.
He's a
He's
chonker.
huge.
He is huge.
Oh my.
he,
He's a
he,
big
he,
boy.
He's half Maine Coon.
Oh, Mancoon.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
It shows.
So yeah, well, like the most of the researchers or like scientists who have any effect on the governance are like applied researchers, right? Like the doctors, the engineers, like these people have more impact. Like if you look at any kind of like basic science, like physicists have some effect right now because like there's a lot of research on high energy physics by Department of Energy and Department of Defense, like that. But like let's leave that aside. It's completely a different arena. But like besides that, the basic research has almost no effect on governance. Like and it will not, because it doesn't bring you money, and that like whenever you ask money from the government, if you're not asking for like weapons, they will say how will we pay for this. It's just true for the basic research. So that's then you don't have any effect on the governance too. Like it's like, think about this, the most applied part of this basic research is climate research, right? How much the effect the climate research has on our governance? Almost none. So there you go.
Do you think that's a science issue? Like maybe we haven't done a good enough job of making universities more public facing, in the sense that, like, I find this so fascinating. And the first day of class, I get up and tell my students, hey, this is who I am and this is what I do. Here's my research. And they just cannot believe it. And I said, and every person you take a class with is doing the same thing. So I wonder how much of this is like just people are just so ignorant, and because we've not done our part.
I would completely disagree with people. People are ignorant, like, and we are not doing our part. I think this is a class issue, and like the science, day by day is becoming more close to the public, and like I think we were trying to be better at this for a while, like in early 2000s, but now it has turned all the way back, and now it's becoming more closed to the public. Even though the researchers want everything to be more open, the general structure that is fueling the scientific research doesn't want that to happen. Like, think about all publication like industry. Publication industry is trying to make everything closed. So like my research is funded by the taxpayer. Then I write a paper and use that taxpayer money to publish my paper in a journal. And that journal takes that taxpayer money and asks for more money from the taxpayer to open that research to them. And like it's not just opening to public, it's opening to private citizens. So it's like, that's kind of that sounds like a scheme to me. It's not yeah.
It's definitely a scheme.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we haven't figured out a way to get around it.
Oh yeah, that's a big problem. So that's kind of like, when I started streaming, I was like, okay, I want the science to be open to public. How can I open this? Like,
right.
what can I do? So that was my starting point, to be honest. Like, did this, making my stream open source is kind of a like, a starting point for my plans for the future. I want to make like open source tools for people to have access to the tools they need to do science. Because I think, first of all, like doing science behind closed doors is not a good idea. Like the science should be open to public, and the private citizens should have access to the tools they need to do science themselves, like without needing the university, roof. They should be able to do this themselves. So I think that's an important thing, and not having these have a huge effect on like all of this like if you think about like I want to like connect this to our race discussion too, since this becomes a very class related issue. When these people go around and start like making these claims that are not scientific, people have little understanding of how science works, so they just believe them. So like, and there's only one solution to this: opening the science to everyone, and like really opening science to everyone. It's not just like I think it's a good it's an okay idea to go to like high schools and make them hyped about science. I don't disagree with that, but I think it's an like ineffective method to deal with the problems we are dealing with. We need to find ways for those those students to be able to have the resources they need with the ideas they have to start doing science at any level. It's not just like going and talking to them that science is great and they can do anything with us in a university, and then it becomes a competitive thing because like no, you don't have the resources to support all of them, and it just becomes a very, very shitty situation where you can support one or two of the students, and it's again not open to the public. It's a competitive process.
Yeah, community science projects.
Yeah, like community science projects, like today's community science projects, right? Like the universities open these positions to high school students, but it's a competitive position. Only the best student goes in. I think it's not a good idea. Like the science, like if you're opening science to the public, it should be open to the public.
Right.
We should give people the resources when they need.
Yeah.
Like
what comes to mind immediately is if nobody's aware of the Detroit Community Technology Project, it is a way for open source broadband to be provided to low income communities in Detroit that don't have access to broadband. So it's just like people who are part of the church, part of food pantries, all like intersecting to provide broadband to communities that don't have it. And it's also like an educative program for like kids who otherwise wouldn't have like tech programs to get into.
Yeah.
By the way, thanks for the reminder there about class and like access. That's totally one side of the argument I completely sometimes miss. So thanks for the head bop, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Again, I'm all on the like sidetracked all over the place.
No, it's fine. I mean, like, I think that raises actually a pretty important question, especially if we're bringing up the idea of educational inequities on a variety of bases. One of them being class. Are the people who are doing like all of the scientific racism, both past and present, like, do we think this is a function of inequity? Do we think that's simply they never learned why it was bad and they just learned from people around them that believed it? Or did they join science and then tried to warp data to conform to these beliefs? Like how in the upbringing of people like E.O. Wilson or Razib Khan, like how do we think they came to be?
Like Razib Khan is very interesting, isn't it? Like he is not like he's not a white person. Like I wouldn't call him a white person.
Yeah, I think
If
I
I
mean
saw-
I think it's pretty safe to say he's an Arab man.
Like, yeah, but like, you know, I don't know what's his like background, but he's not white. So like, if you saw him on the street, like in the like I have been having this discussion with my friends in the lab. So what's race, right? Like what's race has a different answer in the US than in the Middle East. So in the Middle East, race is like way more complicated than what's in here. It's like it's not just related to your skin color, because skin color is generally not a representation of the race in the Middle East. Like, you know, everyone comes from a different background. There are Arabs, there are Kurds, there are Turks. Like it's a huge group of people.
Oh, apparently, he was born in Bangladesh.
Yeah. Okay. So, he is not white. Like in the
Right.
US, we describe race as white, but like his ideas are white supremacist, which is like, I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and he was like, "This guy is ill. He needs mental health help." Like this friend of mine is a white man, you know, like he's from Florida. So yeah.
Oh man.
So he was like, this guy is ill. Like, you know, this makes no sense. But it like, I don't know how it happens. It just happens. And I think like these people, especially like, you know, people like Razib Khan, are tokens for the racist movements. Like, you know, they can use these people to say, oh, look, this person is not white, but they say the same thing.
One of the good ones, they say.
One of the good ones, yeah. I know. So that's unfortunately that's the case, I think. You know, like I don't think it's about the upbringing. Also, like I feel like there is this idea. Some people think that if they think like hard enough that they belong to another class, they can.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
I'm
notion
sorry.
of false class solidarity, right? People thinking they have more in common with a billionaire than, you know, the worker right next to them.
Yeah, the lumpen prole.
Yeah, that's why Elon Musk, you know, is not allowed in my chat, and I think I will ban Jordan Peterson too. JP will not be allowed in my chat from now on. Like, because one of the things is, like, every once in a while someone comes and asks me about what I think about Jordan Peterson. Like, I don't think about him. Like, why? You know, he is a mentally ill person who needs help. Like, I'm not a, you know, psychologist or psychiatrist, so I don't think about him. He's not in my lane. Once in a while he makes like ridiculous claims, but that's who he is. You know, he makes ridiculous claims about everything.
Yeah, but it's almost getting to the point where, like, you kind of have to think about him, though, right? Because he's making those ridiculous claims. Because you get people like you said, coming to you like, "Oh my God, Jordan Peterson said this. Like, you're an evolutionary biologist. Like, don't you agree? Like, is this right?" Like, it's like the things he was saying in climate science at the very beginning of his last appearance on Joe Rogan. Like, obviously, that's not anything he knows anything about, and what he said was criminally insane. But that's not necessarily going to stop people from like taking that, internalizing it, and like believing it because it came from a public figure in, you know, the intellectual dark web, if we even want to call them intellectuals. Right, they exist online. People are going to see it and they're going to internalize it. So I mean, you don't have to, like, you know, spend an entire stream watching 4 hours of those two going at it. God, no, that's torture. That's probably should be illegal. But at the same time, like, you could argue that people like Razib Khan get traction because nobody's out there sort of trying to point out why they're thinking their understanding of biology is very faulty, right? Nobody was really going after Jordan Peterson until he decided he didn't like trans people, and then that's how he kind of like got a big name for himself and started developing his cult personality. So it almost feels like almost internally, I think this is what Professor Q was hinting at earlier, like we almost have a responsibility in our respective domains, whatever they may be, to really start to push back against this thinking before cult personality figures like these really like fester and grow out of control.
Yeah. Like I had to go out of my way this week to talk about race with my students. Like during the recitations, I was like, "Look, this is happening. Go read and learn about this. It's not gone away. Like it's still here, and we have to fight with this." As well as classism in science, we will have to fight with this. We have to make science more inclusive, because like it all comes down to this. I am a scientist. I do science, and since I'm a person, I have biases. So I cannot be like, I cannot be like separated from my biases, and like it doesn't happen that way. When I'm doing science, since it is part of my work, I will put some of my biases there. If all the people in science looks like me, then all the biases will look like mine, and then the science will be biased. So that's how it works. If you make science inclusive, if you bring everyone, then the biases will cancel each other, and it will be more objective, more inclusive, and better. That's how it works, and that's what we should achieve. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. I like. Yes, thank you. My heart is like glowing right now.
I just want to say, and I want to put in a little plug. You guys are going to love the Philosophy of Science seminar.
True.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. I'm like already doing like the 3rd week reading and stuff.
Oh man, wait until we get to like week 6, and week 7, and week 8. Oh man, your minds are going to go, oh my God, I never realized. But
I'm looking forward to that.
I was looking at the Occam's Razor article that you posted in the Discord, Marcus, and I mapped it out with the mind map, and there's a couple nodes there, and it said it quite plainly. I think this is my actually quote. No, I think it's another squeaky toy that the loud right-wing ideologues throw around. It's a treasure trove of clown cars. Right? It's like all of these people making barking noises about, research that they don't understand, and playing into tropes and prejudices and ill-formed ideas and half-baked, theories, and trying to make connections. They're trying to, on the most charitable level, they're trying to learn, but they're just, they're like a 2-year-old trying to learn how to operate a power, drill or something. It's just, they can't quite do it. They can see bits of the big picture somewhat, and but they can't quite manipulate the ideas that they need to manipulate. And it just becomes, this thing where they're yelling, and they even admit it in that article. It's the reviews of what's his name's book, Nick Wade's book, and they have a section: the positive reviews, mixed reviews, and then they have negative reviews. And they start out negative reviews with, in parentheses, could the vanguard of attacks end up being a strange coalition of cultural Marxists and religious creationists? These are the people who are telling you that, this is a good theory here, and this is their kind of defensive prep against any type of argumentative attack. It's clown car.
It
It's
literally.
a treasure trove of clown cars.
Anyway, I think that's a very apt quote, and I think this goes back to something Gremloe said earlier, right? I think not necessarily sort of in the legislative sense, but sort of almost indirectly talking about a lot of these things and sort of creating this false sense of intellectual validity around these ideas, especially when we're throwing around buzzwords like cultural Marxists and religious creationists, a la Jordan Peterson. If we have this sort of veneer of scientific accuracy around these ideas, people like elected officials in a certain party, mainly the Republicans, will start tossing these ideas around and start pointing to these people as purveyors of legitimate information that riles up their base, that gets them excited, and that sort of instills confidence in said political base that this person running for whatever seat is saying the right things, agrees with them, despite all of these ideas being faulty. And that kind of has this effect of keeping these people in power, because all they have to do is press the race science button to rile up their base every single time they want to. And we see it all the time. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene's a great example when she's saying all sorts of disgusting, awful things about Ilhan Omar, about her being a Muslim. Like that has that effect of sort of re-invoking all of these ideas that we know have been debunked, but that it's not necessarily about going into the clown car and debunking it to the contents of the clown car. It's we should stop the clown car from operating in the first place and make sure its occupants can't get into another car, because when they're driving it around, that creates further problems. We're propagating the ideas, we're propping up the Razib Khans, the E.O. Wilsons. It speaks to something very much like hard-coded into the institution. I think that's really why this topic is worth addressing in the first place, because we're struggling really to come to grips with the fact that even in science, still today, in current year, we're still dealing with this. Like, it still exists. It might not be as rampant or widespread as it once was, but people either already believe it or they're willing to adopt it for political gain.
Right. And what I'm saying, I think, is we have to recognize it as not a scientific issue at all.
Right.
And we should never give it the respect that scientific inquiry deserves, because it's simply not. We treat it as a political football issue. That's what it is. That's how they use it. That's why they're doing it. And, if we treat it any other way than that, it's giving them false legitimacy.
Does the terminology of a political football, is that a layered criticism? Because a political football entails like material like financial interests and even racial interests for the more white supremacist side of the Republican Party. Should we?
It implies the whole game,
right?
A whole game, everything from the big macro rules that define the entire enterprise to the micro, kicking around at the ball and moving the football in different ways to score points, right? And I'm not sure that that's what we want our political process to be, is a point scoring game, but that's how it's functioning with these people,
right?
So I don't know. How do we change those schemas?
Yes, we got 5 minutes to do that.
Ready?
In your places, go.
I give a lot of thought to this myself about like, how do we get out? How do we get out of this? What philosopher I've read a lot of says the eclipse of reason. This kind of dark period where all hope seems lost.
All hope is lost. We're all doomed. All of it. Doomed, I tell you.
That's my inner goth coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, the apex of the singularity.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Not the singularity.
No.
Yeah, I think part of it, like, we could probably attack this from a couple of angles, right? Like, especially, we could use Twitch as sort of a microcosm example of this, right? Because we have a variety of people in here. Some of us stream in science, some of us, like Gremloe, you're a political streamer. And Professor Q, you've really been making the rounds in a whole wide variety of Twitch chats. I've seen you on and off in, all sorts of different categories.
It's because I live in mid-Missouri. I have nothing to do. This is my social hour.
Yeah, those flyover states, prime real estate for Twitch chat.
Yeah, shout out to all of the flyover state frogs in all of our respective chats. But like, at least like I'll start with Gremloe, right? You're very much, I think, you're more likely to encounter sort of the political base that I was alluding to before, right? The people who are going to go vote on the basis of white identity, white supremacy, things like that. I think it would help you and other people in the political domain to sort of have the information about the biological underpinnings and lack thereof of all of these ideas, how a lot of it is simply not rooted in biology. But even for us, like for all of us in sort of the academic sphere, it almost feels like we have to really talk about the politics of the matter, not necessarily the science, because a lot of us do have enough scientific training to really understand that pretty quickly. That's going to be a pretty short conversation with a lot of people in our circles. But I think it's more so sort of creating a ideological culture within academia that has very little tolerance for this, right? We've sorted the science out over many, many years. It's not like there's some sort of revolutionary GWAS that somebody just published yesterday that managed to find the perfect gene to explain behaviors of people they don't like. So we have to really like enforce that culture that these kinds of things aren't worth studying. People who are trying to force the issue might be doing a little bit of a self-report, kind of exposing themselves as people who might believe these things because the science is already solved. So we almost have to sort of take stock of who's around us and really point people out.
You raise an interesting point, by the way, about like this flash of insight just came to me. Like maybe so IRBs are the institutions that govern all research on university campuses. Maybe it's time for the IRB to like start to develop an actual backbone on what's getting researched and maybe push back on some of this kind of junk science kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that, but I think it would also require those who comprise the IRB to sort of have this knowledge under their belt, and that might be inconsistent across different institutions, whether they be academic, private, what have you. Any IRB, any review board of any sort that's sort of making the ultimate philosophical decision of, is this worthwhile to allow? Like, do we as a society want to engage in this research? We need to have those people have the same understanding that we do. So I guess the question is, yeah, IRBs would be a great vector, but how do we make sure that that's a culture that they're abiding by?
Well, I also want to point out that IRBs can also squelch research, which they do, that may seem worthy and may open up, potentially fruitful avenues of research. But, the person reviewing it on the IRB, they don't quite believe that. They have their own kind of pet theory about how, this particular thing in, whatever field works, cognition or economics or whatever. And so they will deny that research for ethical reasons, because it conflicts with their personal beliefs. So I want to point out that it works both ways, and I want us to be careful about manipulating that and how we manipulate that. I think we have to be very honest and open source about it, maybe, and have those very open and direct conversations about it. Because
transparency is something that is missing from today's society almost completely. Like I was going to say academia, but it's not just academia. It's just like it is lacking in our society completely. So I think we definitely need transparency. But I kind of will go with Marcus's idea about like we should make the environment so like humans like to belong, right? We need to make the environment very hostile for people who are like racist and who are also classist. So we should like, I think like this might sound like wrong. I understand. I don't think this sounds like correct when you think about it, because like I'm saying we should make the environment completely hostile to these people, but I think we should, because these ideas are hostile to the society overall. So like, since the ideas are hostile, if we don't make the environment hostile for these ideas, they will hide in the dark until they find like a single opportunity to take over. Like I think this like, you know, again, let's bring it to the race discussion. The start of this race discussion was an article on Scientific American, and that article is a good article, but it wasn't addressing all the racist points, like, you know, by showing them one by one. And these people were like, oh, here is a great opportunity for us to attack a like woman of color and tell her that E.O. Wilson was not racist or whatever, even though his work like literally like influenced so many racist ideas. And he was I think he was mentoring racist people and all that stuff. So it's that like that's why I think we need to make this completely like hostile to these people. That's kind of, you know, like when I think about my community, I don't want people to come and talk about like, you know, their classist ideas or anything. Like those people, when they come, I just chase them away. Like I don't need them. Like the same goes for libertarians. I don't need them in my community. Like seriously, my community is very libertarian hostile. Like if you come, I like, you know, you're not welcome. It's very easy for me.
Mhm.
Why are you biting me? I'm getting bit.
He's a libertarian.
Maybe. Like if my cat was a human, I bet, like I'm 100% sure he would be a conservative asshole, 100%.
My wife and I have a running theory that we have two dogs, and we think that one of them is like a communist and one of them is a fascist. I'll let you guys in chat try and figure out which one is which.
Wait, you have two Pomeranians?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen them enough to really distinguish between the two.
Well, the
At least
big
as far as their
one
political
doesn't like to
ideology.
come on camera.
Yeah, that one might be the fascist.
It's actually the
crypto
opposite.
palm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Fascists love attention. What can you? I mean,
What's up?
Yeah, that is exactly it. Loves attention, doesn't want anybody to come like near what she finds to be hers, and the other one just like he's real communal, you know.
this may be going way off topic, but so I've seen this kind of research raise its ugly head in other ways. Somebody already mentioned, you know, trans rights, and so I'm and again, due to the nature of the classes I teach, this comes up a lot. So sociology of sport, it comes up all the time. I'm kind of actually dreading it this semester because it's been so in the news cycle for like a week straight almost. Yeah, what's your thoughts, comments on that kind of stuff?
Okay,
Yeah.
I will have to take a break to feed this chunk because he is like right now he is biting me and like all over me. I need to give him some food.
He's
I
got
guess
low blood sugar. That's what's up.
he already ate his dinner right now. But I was gone for a while. I bet he wasn't eating enough, so now he's really hungry. So I'll be back in a bit. Like just, you know, I will leave the camera on.
Okay.
Yeah.
No
All
worries.
right.
What was your question, Professor Q?
Yeah. So, well, I'll just use this as a example. So I had a student who's a weightlifter in my class last semester, and they were studying biology. Reason I'm pausing is I'm like, okay, wait a second, I need to make sure I don't give away any kind of, you know, and trans weightlifters was like something that really kind of riled her up, right? Because, you know, she's in weightlifting and there's been a couple trans athletes specifically within weights. I don't think she came from a place of bad faith, but it was interesting to me to see how her, sports tends to be one of those hot button issues. And yeah, I was gonna kind of see just where everyone's heads were on that, or just kind of maybe throw in another.
Well, I mean, I can take that. I feel like I've learned a lot over the last week preparing for a trans Lifeline charity stream. So is this person themselves cis or are they trans?
They're cis. They were a student in a previous semester, so there's been some time.
Okay. Well, I mean, the fear, which is what it is, around trans athletes in sports is simply based on that. It's fear of the other, fear of something that they don't understand, or this notion of competitive advantages, which is on its face, absurd. Sports is kind of one of the few arenas that actually has some semblance of meritocracy, where those who have the most skills, those who work the hardest, do tend to come out on top. Now, there is obviously like a class and racial line you can draw to top performing athletes, those who have the most access to the best gyms, the best dietary regimen, the most trainers. There's obviously something in that. But by and large, sports, at least in the lower rungs, like high schools and stuff, that's kind of where you see meritocracy exist the most. But, and I have several articles that, if you'd like me to share, I can, that the notion that somehow trans women in sports, which is, it's always women, which I find interesting that they want to focus on, are somehow at an advantage. It's just simply not true. It's not borne out in any kind of data. And on the fear aspect of it, what's the fear that someone who was born assigned male at birth, who is transitioning, is going to outcompete athletes in their field because they want to get that trophy and are willing to undergo years of therapy, like a bunch of medical regimens that are going to be on and off, working, not working, cause a myriad of different effects on their physiology and psychology, and that they're going to do all of that for hopefully a medal. It's absurd on its face.
So yeah, I get that part. I guess my question was more, since we got two biologists in the house, every time I do a deep dive on this within the scientific journals, I find one study that says, yeah, testosterone makes a difference, and I see another study that says, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of like, hey, where is the science on this stuff?
Yeah, at least from what I know, I would say the latter, that says we really don't know, is probably the more parsimonious one right now, especially one because the rates of medical transitioning, I think, have probably been the highest in a long time, like in terms of like actual data gathering and data collection to try and understand the issue. Like, we probably haven't had as many opportunities compared to this point in history to actually do what we can to gather biological data to even figure out the role of testosterone in people who are transitioning. But with that being said, like there's going to be a fair amount of physiological difference between different people who transition. So even like I would say biology is so just remarkably complicated that you can medically transition and have someone who was assigned male at birth transition to being female, and like you're not, those people, even compared to each other, they're not going to be the same biologically, even if you manage to control the testosterone levels. There's so much variability that it's very difficult without having a massive sample size to really have a big assessment on a particular population to be like, yes, testosterone levels of this range of nanograms per deciliter is going to translate to this ability to play sports. Like it's not even something we really understand.
Yeah. Not to mention, the people who are making a big stink about this are the same people who, in prior to the bathroom bill debacle of like 2015 to 2017, were the same people who would be like, "Oh, the WNBA, Omega lol." Like, they don't care about women's sports. They don't care about the sanctity of of athletics. They just don't like trans people.
Yeah, it's culture war shit.
Yeah. I also, like, when you talk about sex and like all of these kind of stuff, the sex determination in biology is super complicated shit. It's like it's not like when people say it's the chromosomes. No, it's not. It doesn't work that. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. It's not that binary. It's so complicated. Like, there are so many things going on, and we know very little. Like, we are trying to understand what's going on in other species to understand what's going on in humans, but then we are finding that it is super complicated shit. Like, I'm not the right person to talk about this, like, for sure. Like, there are people working on this who could talk about this like very long with all the examples and stuff. I'm not that person. I just know from like the research I read that's the limit I have. But it's complicated stuff. Like, I like when I read about the sex determination, I'm like, wow, this is complicated. And then when you go into the gender and stuff, like, there's this idea that humans are exceptional, like, which I completely disagree. Humans are no exception to anything in nature. They are one other species with, like, the only exceptional thing we have might be our language thing, and we don't know how exceptional that is. Like, we have little understanding about what's going on in nature, and like, you're not exceptional. Like, when we look at nature, we see the examples of gender in different ways, but they, like, of course, they don't assign, like, a gen, like, it's not a written construct, but it is there. Like, in lions, let's say, the females hunt, males don't. Can't they? I think they can. Do they? No. Why? We don't know. So, like, there are these kind of weird examples, and then, like, when sometimes people come and say, "Oh, there's no homosexuality in animals." Wow. What are you talking about? Like, do you know what you're talking about? I think you don't, because there is homosexuality in animals, and like,
people actually say that still.
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just,
I remember when I was like in my teens, like, Oprah was putting this scientist on who found like gay octopus, and they were like, it was this big finding. I can't believe we're still talking about this.
I mean, we're still talking about like the alpha and beta, like,
Males,
social constructs within the animal kingdom. Like, we still have these conversations, and to a certain extent, I think, in Marcus had mentioned something about this earlier. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it made me think about it. Mentioning, like, I might be more likely to encounter the racial aspects of communities, like race realism and whatnot, because of the area I'm in, which is to a point true. I don't think it's necessarily like a scientific racism, but
Right.
I think a lot of these pseudo-scientific concepts exist in these kinds of spaces. The layman who is not, on Twitch, or who's watching the latest episode of, the Ben Shapiro show, theirs is a unknown justification. It is what it is to most of them, them being, racist. And the same goes for people who still believe, like, homosexuality doesn't exist in nature, or climate science is not real. Like, these are justifications that are internalized. They don't have any kind of like external motivations that are guiding their worldview. There are some aspects like media that they consume, sure, but a lot of it, I find at least, is just people who don't want to examine, either from within internally or from a macro perspective, what is going on in their day-to-day life or whenever these topics come up.
Yeah, I think part of that is like, we like, as a species, we have the tendency to explain things. We want to explain things. We want to know what they are, and that pushes us for deductive reasoning because it's easy. We come up with the idea first, and then we try to find like stuff to support that. Like it's like again, it comes from our need to know, like not our need to learn. It's not our need to learn. It's our need to know. That's why we find what it is, and then try to like support it with the evidences we try to find. So it's a really big problem, but it can be solved with education. But our education system is not good for that. Our education system pushes everyone to deductive reasoning.
Well, I don't disagree, but I want to add on to this a little bit because all of the theories that we're now firmly in the camp of, they're ridiculous theories. They should be completely stamped out of public discourse. The race realism stuff, the sexual orientation stuff, the gender and identities, and all of the bad stuff was once believed by a majority of people,
the American
both
people
culturally and within the scientific community, as reasonable and relatively true.
Oh, hey,
within my
Krish.
lifetime, there were
what's up?
Medical studies taking place where they tried to change the behavior of gay men by giving them more testosterone, right? And what happened?
Muscles, great.
Well, a few more muscles, but what the result was is that you had hornier gay men, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. It didn't change them. It didn't change their orientation to want them suddenly desiring
really
women and having heterosexual relationships and all of that. They just became hornier gay men. And I would kind of point out that all of that is a product
or in
of
Caitlin
where
Bennett's case,
you are,
made
how
her
you come up
reactionary.
in a culture that influences the way you see science, the way you see, what it is that you're supposed to study. And of course, we have very sophisticated ways of doing our science now, and there's a very long training and apprenticeship process through that shapes your mind and tells you what you're open to,
little Krish,
and what you
the
can
Hassan chatter?
see in terms of what you're supposed to measure and test and experiment with, and all of that. And even the possibility of, there being something as natural as homosexuality within the ideas of scientists,
followed.
much, and certainly wasn't part of
Or
the
they
idea
just
of
followed.
the larger population for a variety of social reasons. But all of those things were considered true. And so today we may be dunking on people for, doing those bad things, but at some point in the future, people are going to look back at us and say, how can you believe that? How could you believe that? That's ridiculous. We know so much better now. So how do we deal with that type of attitude and that type of argument? Because I think that your question, Professor Q, regarding the weightlifter and how people see it and how people still hold on to, antiquated ideas is related to that somehow. Where do we see ourselves historically and at this moment.
Hey, what's up,
based
Alex?
on what we've been brought up in.
I mean, I can
Yeah.
just tell you where I sit with it is there was an interesting article that came out a number of years ago about sociological determinism. So this is the flip side of this argument, right? That sociology, because it's emphasized the the upbringing and the nurture aspect and learned behavior, that it's fallen into this trap of overemphasizing the social and at the expense of biology. So if you were to go to like the American Sociological
I
Association
just came here to mention that.
and brought
Okay.
up biology, you would be chased out.
What's this
like,
panel about?
Without a doubt.
Well,
so
this is
I
Homozygoat.
like to leave the
He's
possibility
a
for biology at least partially open.
microbiology
'Cause
PhD.
I just
This is
don't know.
Professor Q. He's a
Well, can I ask,
sociologist.
are emotions
This is Dr. Boyne.
biologically based?
He is
in
a multidisciplinary
This is dangerous
professor.
ground.
And this is
Yeah, I know.
Evo. He's an evolutionary
it is very dangerous.
biologist.
So
And I'm a dumb himbo.
I mean,
Because they factor
hard-
into how we see the things, right?
the
Yeah,
hardcore people in social would say it's all constructed. But I'm not necessarily willing to say that.
So I would say, like, emotions are, of course, has a biological basis. Like it's
Yeah, we're talking about all kinds of science.
Like biology is the person. Like, that's like a living being. Like the alternative to putting, saying that emotions are not biological would make it a dualist argument, I would assume, and that's like, I don't know. I think that's unscientific at the moment. Like I have to like throw that line at the moment. That's unscientific because there's no ground that we can make that argument. But
Right.
here is one thing we know from the quantum mechanics, and there is a thought that's growing it's in the background, which is gaining some attraction too. People think maybe the thoughts we have and the consciousness as we understand it is an emergent property of the brain due to its quantum states being something. I don't know. I don't understand. Like I don't understand because I don't know how it can happen. It might happen. I cannot say it is impossible because, like, again, I cannot say it's impossible because I'm a scientist. Like,
Right.
there
Well, I
is
agree
a
that
possibility.
I agree that it's absolutely emergent. Our behaviors are emergent. We are biological beings. We're an animal. We're a species of this planet. We interact with an environment, and those behaviors are emergent. Every context has boundaries and qualities to it that we interact with, and so we make decisions and adapt to different things. So in that sense, I would say absolutely we live lives of emergent being. I don't know, I can't get to the quantum level on that, and I don't know how they do it, but I'm willing to listen when somebody comes up with a good explanation of it.
But I think it all goes back to this like double slit experiment. Maybe Marcus would know, or like you know the observer effect, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's like we I think from that experiment we know that there is an effect of observer or on the material, like on the electron level, on the quantum level, which is an interesting property. I don't know how we can extrapolate that into a consciousness, because then it's like almost saying that the electrons are conscious. Then it becomes the George Carlin argument that it's just big electron. You know?
Well, I mean, hell, you could take it even one step farther. Just thinking about the electrons change the superposition.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, it's just like, you know, you can also make the argument into some determinist argument that the electrons decide.
God, I mean, like at that point, it's
Electrons
almost not
have
even
agency.
worth.
We've determined it here tonight. Electrons have agency.
Yeah, I'll text my PhD in physics having friend. I'll ask him if electrons are sentient. I'll see what he has to say.
It's a breakthrough. It's a breakthrough.
So yeah,
well,
it's like I like it, again. Then when we are talking about these without knowing enough, it becomes like, you know, I don't think it's scientific to talk about these like without knowing enough. So we have to just draw the line. So like with today's knowledge that I have, and we like, you know, as a scientific community we have, I think what we can say is like, you know, everything has biological basis, but some stuff can be emergent properties of the biology. So like, you know, emotions can be an emergent property of biology. That's, you know, then it would be harder to explain, but it wouldn't make it like a dualist argument. Like I think dualist arguments are very dangerous to science. That's how I feel, at least.
Yeah, I mean, at least in line with that. I mean, Lewontin talks about this, I think, in a very biological context, but you know, it's basically the notion of, you know, this very like Cartesian way of thinking where you can just break down everything into parts and then try and look at all the parts, what they do, add them together, and then be like, oh yeah, the sum of the parts should absolutely just be what all the parts do individually together. And that's not the case, right? Because we have emergent behavior, right? We have the sentience that we do, we have emotions, we have things that aren't just purely reducible to, you know, a particular cell in our body doing A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. But he raises the question almost like philosophically, right? Like, especially when it comes to things like race realism in science, you know, even if we, you know, in 30 years or something develop technology that somehow actually allows us to start picking at this somehow, like, is it worth it? Like, what are we going to get from doing that? Right? He very much attacked the notion of, you know, the sequencing technology revolution and the Human Genome Project at the turn of the millennium, and basically said, you know, we're fostering this very reductionist mindset of trying to reduce everybody to letters on a computer screen, when that's not how the real world works, and we're only going to make everything worse and not better when it comes to that thinking. And I can't help but agree with him, because we're kind of talking about it tonight. Like, it was almost very prophetic. Yeah, Gattaca. Like, we might not even reach a Gattaca-esque future. We could, but, you know, is it even worth trying? Right? Because people are going to abuse whatever gains we make to do racism on main, for lack of a better way to put it. Like, this is going to be a perpetual problem that we're going to have, regardless of, you know, whether we figure out quantum physics or biology or everything in between to, you know, 100, 5 sigma level of certainty.
Right.
You know, it may sound cliche, but I think it's the worst thing we can do is to ever stop learning. Right? If we're not open to learning anymore, if we think we figured out how to do all of these things, and we can manipulate the genome and produce whatever kind of human being that we want to produce and call it perfect, we can probably do that. But I think that would be a mistake, because we leave ourselves closed off to learning and adaptation, which is the death of a species, right?
Okay, here is a controversial take. Okay.
Oh, hot take time.
Let's hear it.
So I was thinking about what you're saying, like early on, like several years ago, about like how human society is structured and how there are different strategies in, like, you know, used by different individuals. And I don't think everybody is open to learning, and it doesn't work that way. I was like, okay, let's call two strategies, like to make it easier, because you know, I'm a scientist. I dumb things down to understand. Let's call two strategies. One of them is the liberal strategy, but not in terms of like liberals and conservatives in politics. Let's think about these as the strategy. So let's call it liberal strategy, where the individual is open to new experiences, new knowledge, like is trying out and doing these kind of stuff. And there is the conservative strategy, where these individuals just don't do that. Like they just stick with what's given to them. Can this be actually the can there be a let's think about the game theoretical way, a like stable strategy between these two that is more like that's better for the whole society, if it makes any sense. Like it's like that. The controversial part is maybe the conservative group of the people are helping the society in some way without learning. Like I know it's very controversial to say that, but maybe they have a good function in the society. Can it be possible?
If you're asking me, I would say I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, let's see, how should I say this? If we think of our species as a global species, right, which we are, and we think of ourselves as part of an evolutionary timeline, which we presumably are, then having different strategies and different ways of looking and addressing challenges, the diversity of tactics and the diversity of approaches seems to be something reasonably healthy for a species, not necessarily for individuals or small groups, but for the species. It seems to be a relatively good strategy for adaptation, for the anticipation of any kind of interjection or challenge to the environment and the life of that species. So I would say it may serve a purpose. I don't necessarily think it's a purpose beyond adaptation, but then everything is serving that adaptive purpose, right? And so how do you decide which strategies are good enough to come to consensus on, and which are good enough to kind of let atrophy and wither and fall away? Do we make those decisions, or are we forced into those decisions through time and intergenerational transmission and knowledge? I mean, I don't know.
No, I think that's like that will be a question I don't think I will be able to answer. Like I truly believe that like everybody should learn everything, but then when I look around, like there are people who are more conservative about like what they learn and how like they don't want to learn. Like I know a lot of people who don't want to learn anything. It's very interesting. They just want to learn what's given to them, which will help them to survive, and that's their limit, and that's how they live. It's an interesting thing.
Right. I mean, I think that should be a valid way of being. I don't see any reason to discourage it necessarily.
Well, but then you could use a hypothetical, right? Like if their inability to learn about, or their lack of desire rather to learn about a race realism or like a COVID vaccine or something, like especially when it has tangible effects on other people, like at that point, their lack of desire to learn about this thing that is very much important in society has effects that extend beyond them. And I think what's the word? An externality? I think that's the word I was looking for. Like that's a big externality to that whole way of living.
So I think to Marcus's point, it's a good point. So I think that's where like these people just want to learn one thing about the vaccine, right? They want to be given one information that's correct and just go with it. If you start to give them like contradicting stuff one after the other, like completely mixed messages, then they will go into the loopholes of like the conspiracy theories and stuff, because they are fundamentally they fundamentally don't want to learn to start with. Like their idea to survive is to do the least to survive, and they will pick, if you give like mixed messaging, they will pick which is the easiest for them, not the right one. I'd like that. That's how I see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I see it a little differently, I guess. I see it as if they're still going to make meaning of it, of their experience, even in their resistance. They're still making meaning of it somehow. They're making it so that they can explain to themselves what they're doing, what the world is like, in order for them to be able to, live in it, right? Because we've crafted these very complex worlds through our stories of, whatever, science and, kids' lullabies and, art and literature. And we've created all kinds of, stories for ourselves. And how they can process all of that, I don't know. I don't think anybody can really process it all. So we get down to, we can process what we can process, and then we make meaning of that, and how we make meaning of it comes out in our stories. And that is necessarily political, right? So we're back to the game of politics, and how do we understand that? And do we understand that politics is a participatory process, or is politics just a master-serf relationship? What is politics to people?
I think it's an interesting question, because in a similar fashion, I had a conversation with a friend. This was right around the time of the 2020 election, when Yang was talking about UBI a lot, and Yang, like, UBI has become a conversation within the public sphere more so than in the past. And a friend of mine who was resistant to that idea of unconditionally, universally providing this this monetary, this financial incentive, or thing that we give people. And to the same way, I think we can draw that along education as well. We set up the society so that the baseline is there. The education and the opportunity to engage with it is always there, and your means of engaging with it are there. And the same goes for the UBI. Even if 1-2% of the population decides they're going to live a subsistence lifestyle just off of that minimum, well, the beneficial good, the utilitarian good of that universality of that is overwhelmingly positive. So even if we provide 98% of the population with great education, they're constantly learning, even if that 1-2% decides, I don't want anything to do with it, I like QAnon better, well, the overwhelming good is going to be, obviously, I take that. And we set up the society so that even if those externalities exist, those buffers are still in place to prevent that externality from affecting the larger populace.
I do have good news on that front, by the way, the QAnon front, which is kind of where my name comes from. Someone did a very interesting study that I ran across on QAnon and its impact on politics. And what they found was it actually didn't make that much of a difference overall. There's some issues with the study in terms of getting politicians elected. So they looked at politicians who were leaning into QAnon, and what it did do was it got them more views, like it got them more TV time, but it actually didn't have that big of an influence over who got elected versus who didn't. So
interesting.
Put that in the win column. Take the small victories.
I'll take that dub where I can get it.
I think in terms of the politics, in the short term, the effect might be small, but I think the effect in the societal level is it's more important, because like this, I think we are having, like, we are in a time where people's trust in authority is decreasing, which is not necessarily a bad thing too. Like we have to make this clear. Like people's decrease in the decreased trust in authority is not necessarily a bad thing. It like when these kind of things happen, they happen for a reason. Like, and there are reasons that people are not trusting the authorities now. Like, I don't need to explain all of them right now. I don't think we would have time to like talk about all of them. But everybody knows what we are talking about. So like, at a time like this, when you are creating an environment and flooding the environment with the conspiracy theories are like easy to like they will flourish. It will happen because the authorities are questioned, and when authorities are questioned, people don't think, which like again this comes down to the average person and how they are thinking. They don't think that, oh, this authority is different than this authority. They say, oh, authority bad, and then they extrapolate it to everyone. And let's say you are an authority in science, but then you are questioned too. Like their trust decreased because of the shitty government policies, and maybe like a bunch of like corrupt doctors, but now they don't trust anyone who tells them anything. So they say, oh, if these scientists say something, I won't believe them. First of all, they are doing their stuff behind the closed doors, like the politicians. So how can I trust their work? Like I don't trust the politicians. I won't trust the scientists, and that's that. So that's why I think the short-term political effects might be small, but I think that there is like long-term, societal effects which we will have to deal for a while, and it's a problem. Like I don't think like decreasing trust in authority is necessarily a bad thing, but if you lose trust in all authority completely, like our society has so much structure, I don't think we can survive to that kind of thinking. I don't think the society can survive to that kind of thinking.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of institutions would collapse if there weren't enough trust in them. So, and I think it's related to the issues of transparency and being able to trust that knowledge, and how people gatekeep information and how you spin the information that you do let out in the wild. Is that politics?
Like
personal is political, right?
No, I say everything is political. Like science is a political action. Like if someone comes and tells me that science should not be a part of politics, I'm like, no, science is political act. Since we are creating some knowledge, and like we have also like we are not just creating knowledge, we have control over the knowledge.
You just described the conversation that led to this show.
So it's like, yeah, like we have control over the knowledge, right? Like then it's political. Because it's power. Like as soon as you put the power into a group of people, what's this?
Right. Oh, wait a minute. I have power now? I can do
God.
these things? I can change things? What? That's amazing. Let me have more of that.
No, I don't want no more power.
Can I have his power?
Every time I get a little bit more, I realize, oh shit, that comes with like actual stuff I gotta do.
Yeah, so you're the one. You're that person. You don't want to know. You just don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Like giving away the power, or like or somebody getting the power by force. That's the definition of like early states, I guess. Where the states start.
And I was saying this in Marcus's chat too. It's a very, I don't know if this would, I mean, you have a more international perspective, Evo, so you might be able to elucidate on this idea that it's a very American mentality, a very American point of view, that authoritarian or concepts like freedom are very esoteric, undefinable concepts, but you're tied so closely to your personality and your sense of self that even though they're undefinable, they are completely entangled in your identity and your concept of what your life is. Like authoritarianism, the American ideal is when government does stuff. Communism is when government does stuff, and freedom is when, I don't know, jalapeno poppers.
Yeah, freedom is like, being able to choose which flavor of ice cream you want to eat in the US. You go to an ice cream shop, there are like 45 flavors to choose from. I'm like, what am I going to do now? I have so much freedom here.
Mm-hmm.
But you go to the poll to elect your president, there are two choices.
Yep.
And like you look at those two choices, not very different,
Yeah.
I've got another example. You might like this. I lived in the Marshall Islands for 8 years, and on the outer islands for 4 of those years. And on the outer islands, you have maybe one store where you go to get things like soap and shampoo and maybe some kerosene for your stove, or stuff like that. Just basics, matches. You need matches for starting fires and stuff. And so you run out of shampoo and you go to the store, and there's like, you got maybe one choice, maybe sometimes you have two choices, 2 different brands, and that's it. That's what you got. And I came back to the United States on vacation, and I needed some shampoo, and I walked into the supermarket, and I was faced with an entire aisle of choices. And I spent 30 minutes looking around and trying to figure out which one I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out without buying a damn bit of shampoo because I just simply couldn't make that choice. The freedom was overwhelming. There's so much freedom, I couldn't handle it.
This might be I don't know how to describe this idea that I have, but I think in the face of so much, or the illusion of so much choice, because anyone who's looked into how manufacturing is done, especially when it comes to like consumer goods, it's like 8 companies that own everything, but at least the illusion of choice. I think Americans could do with a little less choice, maybe a little oppression, maybe a little scarcity, because it does feel like the vast, seemingly endless amount of goods and services we're able to buy spoils them a little bit, or spoils their expectations at least.
Well,
a complete
I would
lack
say,
of...
like,
Go ahead.
I would say, what does that bring? What kind of enhancement does that bring to my life?
Right.
Nothing really.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
My only thing
like
is like
shampoo.
Right. Obviously that's not good. Obviously we would want like a post-scarcity world, but the mindset that a lot of people who don't engage with these concepts have is that the second that there's no more banana cream Oreos available, well, this is the collapse of Western society.
Yeah, that's the collapse of Western society for sure. Like if you don't give people like banana cream Oreos or mint cream Oreos, that's the total collapse.
Yeah,
like I mean, we're already seeing.
I think we could see a like huge like riots all over all supermarkets if they said no mint cream Oreos anymore. Like, that would happen.
Or imagine if they canceled the Super Bowl.
Oh my God!
I mean, people were going nuts over the pandemic because of sports. Like it was a thing happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because that consumption is the American identity. When you don't have Super Bowl to watch, when you don't
Well-
have endless consumer goods, what is there? What is there to be an American besides your, your economic consumption?
But
exactly.
The very interesting part of the American consumption is there is consumption, like, for sure,
Mhm.
but the consumption is also not something like how can I put it, like, it's not like consuming the goods that are high quality too. It's
Mhm.
like American consumption to me is consuming as much as possible very shitty goods and very shitty food all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I came to the US, like, I'm moving from Turkey, I came to the US, I started, like, trying to get some stuff to eat and all that stuff. I cook for myself. So, like, I've been living away from my family right now, like, for 24 years. So I'm like pretty good at surviving. I came to the US, I was like looking at stuff that I can use to make good food. And I failed so hard. Like, it was so interesting. I failed so hard to get the vegetables and stuff for a while. Like, at that time I was eating meat too, and I was getting meat. I was like, oh, this meat is horrible. Like, I haven't eaten this bad meat in my life before. So it's at that point I was like, okay, the shit is very cheap here, but it is very shitty.
As my South African roommate would say, cheap as deer.
Yeah,
Cheap as deer.
it's very cheap. Like, the meat is very cheap in the US. That was like very, very, very crazy. Like, right now I'm not eating meat because, like, that cheap meat is, like, also a problem for our society right now.
Mhm.
Like, because it is, like, it's coming from an industrial complex that has so much effect on the environment and our society, like, to start with. It's really, really bad. So I was like, okay, I can do something that is to stop eating meat. So I will stop eating meat. That's how I became a vegetarian. But, like, the idea is, like, it was really bad. Now I'm eating much better than I came to the US. But, like, for that, like, to get that kind of, like, food, I worked really hard. It's like you have to put constant effort. And I'll be honest, I am privileged enough to get that food. I know in like, I have lived 6 years in Philadelphia, and I know what a food desert is.
Mhm.
It's really, really sad. And those families are like, how can they feed people? Like, sometimes I go Reddit and read stuff that I saw something, an article saying, oh, the vegan food chains are flourishing. Will they eat up McDonald's? I'm like, no,
No shot.
no. Like, why are you writing this article? Are you dumb? Like, don't you see McDonald's is selling a burger for $1, and the vegan restaurant selling the same amount of burger for $20.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you see the difference here?
Yeah.
Why? Like, can those, like, vegan restaurants eat McDonald's? No, America is poor. Don't you see? Don't you see? Like, a lot of people are, like, below poverty line, deep. It's kind of it's mind blowing. Like, it's also mind blowing that eating from McDonald's is cheaper than eating healthy. That just doesn't make any fucking sense in any way.
It is incredibly expensive to be poor in the U.S.
Oh yeah.
I mean, anywhere.
Oh yeah.
This goes across all societies. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone in here has probably had manager special chicken at one point, where you buy the expired chicken at your local Walmart because you know those sell-by dates are bullshit for the most part, and you go home and freeze it or quickly cook it up for the rest of the week. That manager special chicken probably cost me the same as 2 meals, and I'll get like one, maybe one and a snack out of it. It's awful. And my biggest gripe with vegans is they're right. We do need to end meat production. We do need to scale back our animal farming. We absolutely need to do that, but we're not. There's no way to do that, and I'm okay with an authoritarian measure of doing that, but good luck.
Yeah, no, I agree. But in that front, like the problem is, like, if you want people to change their habits, you need to make the shit accessible and cheaper. Like,
well,
if the sustainable version of the thing is not cheaper in the long run to me, I cannot afford it to start with, then I won't buy it. It's very, 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 very clear. You were saying something. I caught you. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say y'all took it into an economic kind of turn that I wasn't expecting. I was going to, express my sympathies to Evo for having to forgo all the great Turkish food to come to the United States and dine on garbage. That was what I was concerned about, and
same here.
No more donar, no more kofta.
Yeah, I'm like, and it's so close to Lebanese food, right? Which is what my family cooks, and it's, oh my God, I couldn't believe if there weren't Lebanese restaurants and bakeries and everything else around here, it would be a real bad place. But I think that beyond making just things economically available, that there's also a level of cultural change in what you're expecting in terms of food itself, right? And what food has facilitated in different cultures. In a Turkish culture, food is a very social time, right?
Yeah.
And the way you even eat the food, it's very communal. You all grab, I'm presuming from my own Lebanese experience that, you're all sharing the same plates of food, and you're, gathering little bits and pieces and using the bread and eating, and, it's a very shared experience. Whereas the United States, everybody gets their own plate and they, everybody, and it's all very individualistic. And there's something about the way that you interact with food that has a cultural effect, so that if you really want people to start eating well and you want that change to be permanent, I would suggest that there needs to be a cultural change on that level as well as an economic change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now I wouldn't call like eating like a Turkish a healthy habit. Let's make
well,
it
not
clear.
everything we do is healthy, right?
So because you sit down, eat until you're stuffed,
Right.
to the point that you cannot open your eyes, you just go and sleep.
Isn't it like a 6-hour kind of thing, like an all kind of day affair?
It's not like I think there has been a lot of change in Turkish culture, especially after 80s, where the neoliberals came into power and they were like looking up to the United States and brought like all the United States into Turkey. Turkey has become a small United States almost.
So you're saying we ruined Turkey? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but I'm not.
But but it's how colonialism works, right? Like that's
Exactly.
that's the cultural colonialism for you.
Yeah, we teach everyone else how to think.
So the only thing that is still there, like now people go out to eat, and when you go out to eat, it's not going out eating and leaving. Like before you finish your food, here they just give you the check. I'm like, give me some time. I haven't digested this yet. Like the half of the plate is still here. Why
Yeah.
are you bringing me the check? Like it was like it was a crazy experience.
Even on the
We got
consumer
customers
end.
waiting.
Yeah.
We got customers.
Yeah, even on
Even
the
when they're
consumer
not-
end, if you're not producing, if you're not like efficient, you gotta get out.
Yeah, like eat and get the fuck out of here is the attitude that you get from the restaurants. In Turkey, you go to a restaurant and they will bring you possibly some meze. Meze is the stuff they was explaining. Like, you know, meze is brought to the middle of the table, and people share it with pita or lavash or something. So they will bring you meze. You will start, like, you know, eating and discussing, and they will come and ask you what you're eating. You just order the food, and then like the food comes in like half an hour or something. Like if it comes in half an hour, so but maybe sometimes an hour, you just have to wait and talk and eat your meze and just, you know, chat. And then when the food comes, you eat, and then you order your like dessert. Then after dessert, you have to drink tea. Like everything is done, and then you order tea, right? Then you have to drink tea, and like it takes like 1 to 2 hours for a normal going out and eating with friends. Like this is a dinner. Here, a dinner is like from going out to getting out, it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you're lucky.
Right.
This
And
is why
if you're at home, you just toss it in the microwave.
Yeah.
And be done with it.
But then there is no socialization, right? The socializing part is gone, and I think it is in the US. It's on purpose. It's all about making people separate from each other, isolated from each other, and they cannot talk about anything that's relevant to their lives because it's a taboo. You know, like you cannot talk about your salary because it's a taboo. Why the fuck am I not talking about my salary? That's the most relevant thing in our conversation. We are doing the same job, and I don't know your salary. You don't know my salary.
And it goes in the home
that's
too.
Sketchy shit.
It goes in the home too. We sit at the dinner table and we don't discuss pay, we don't discuss religion, we don't discuss politics. The three things that bind us all, where it's taboo in American culture to talk about. What do we do around the family dining table? We try and make niceties to not like trigger one another, and it's you know a cultural artifact that I don't think is so much in place anymore. I feel like a lot of people eat like at their computers or separate from one another on the couch, whatever. I don't even have a kitchen or a dining room. So it's very that's why I love food trucks, because there is a communal aspect to it. Even if you're just like waiting in line, there's like people around you that you can chat with. And the first experience I had with a food truck was in Houston. I sent Marcus a video of the company earlier. Delicious. The first experience I had with communal eating was in Houston. There's right in front of the George R. Brown Convention Center. There's a big park, and I love parks too. And all around this park was just dozens of food trucks. There's just hundreds of people all waiting to get food from this one place, and then they all just sit in the park together. There's a sense of like community just in that I had never experienced before as an American.
Yeah, no, right. It's really bad. It's really like that I think that takes a lot from the families too. Like, you know, if you don't know your family's like finances, how can you help them when they need help? The same goes like both ways, right? Like with my family and I, like, we know what we are doing. Like they know my finances, I know their finances, and if they need help, and if I can provide that help, I will do that. That's like that's an easy thing to do. Whoever has the means to support each other, so like, you know, everything goes better. Like better together is, I think, lost in American culture and that's like, if you create this kind of culture in this family and in the work and everywhere, so it's so easy to do, like, the stuff like union busting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we are completely out of topic right now. We were supposed to talk about
This has gone
fascism
so
and
many
like the
directions.
racists and all that stuff. We are now talking about like what?
That's the sign of a good conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, this might not be a bad stopping point then if we've gone full self-aware and realized that we've been having a very good conversation that is deviated, but it's good. Like, I think this is something encouraging to have on the platform, because obviously, like, us crusty academic types, like, we're still people too. We can still have conversations like normal folks, because a lot of people I encounter, at least in my spaces, don't actually like do this. They don't talk to other people, which all work and no play makes them dull humans. But all of that to say, this is probably a pretty good wrapping up point. I guess any final comments from anybody on the panel, and then after that we'll go ahead and allow Evo to plug himself, and then we will meet again next week. So I guess final thoughts, anyone?
First, somebody should like shush the read and rap. He's talking about me being leftist or something. I am a capitalist, okay? I'm a neoliberal.
Yeah, we'll get you eventually.
Until I get get my citizenship, I'm neoliberal. I'm libertarian.
Libertarian for thee,
Man,
but not for.
I wish somebody had told me before I came to the panel.
So this is becoming a joke, because okay, the immigration system in the US is just kind of like interesting. So when you're getting your interview, they ask you like questions like, are you like, okay, some of the questions, are you going to be involved in prostitution, is one of the questions they ask. Like, serious.
I believe it.
Bitch,
And I hope
might
you
be.
answered with enthusiasm.
So they like,
Enthusiastically
and then
so.
they ask you if you are a communist and you have been part of a communist party in the US or anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a lovely one. I love that one.
It's kind of ridiculous. So like, we kind of make fun of that by like, I'm a capitalist. Like I'm a neoliberal. So until I get my citizenship,
You're just going to invest in publishing some of those open access journals for, $19,000 an article or something, whatever it is that they charge.
As the chat is saying, like, one of the questions they are asking is if you're Nazi, but then there is a clear definition of Nazi. Like, if you have been involved with the Nazi party in Germany, like during the Second World War.
Wait.
That's the definition of Nazi.
Sorry. Wait a second.
Well,
this is
we only
actually
want the
on the
best
application?
Nazis.
Yes.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. Oh my god. Just shoot me.
We only want the best Nazis, right? We don't want the schlubby Nazis. We want the best ones.
Yeah, well, we gotta go for that purity,
Yeah, exactly. All in line with the Nazi ideology.
No, yeah, I think that there are stuff that needs to change in this process. Like I think the language is foul, because it's like, the people who are not citizens in the US are called aliens. I think that's a very foul language, and that's a dehumanizing way to do things. It shouldn't be that way. And when I was trying to get my status as an immigrant, before then I'm not an immigrant because I'm just applying for immigration. At that point, I have a right to exist in the US, like that's the official definition. Right to exist in the US as a husband. That's the definition. Like it's like this is really bad for the people who are trying to like immigrate and stuff. All right, I like okay. If you let me, I'll talk. Stop me. Stop me.
And mute.
All right.
Yeah, we're not going to go full Jackson Hinkle on you.
Yeah.
All right, so let me quickly just kind of start off the close up here. I think that it's important that we as scientists understand who we are and where we come from, and that we understand how that affects not only how we see the world, but how we see our science and how we do our science, and that we have to engage in a struggle to remain open, but not let our background and our training and our understanding of things constrain us too strictly. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's something I would absolutely co-sign.
Mm-hmm.
Gremloe, any final thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, what have we gone over today in the myriad of topics that we've covered? Well, first and foremost, the topic today was debunking race realism. I think the takeaway is that we shouldn't tolerate these kinds of faux science, this pseudoscience within academic circles, at least within the social space. Being properly equipped to argue back and show people through empathy, I think, is most important, how none of that is true, and how we should, try and tie this back to class issues, because that is the thing that unites us all. It is important that we at least engage with the material so that we know how to combat it, and that'll be my takeaway. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Gremloe.
Professor Q, go ahead.
Takeaway. I have 2 and 1 surprise. So
Okay.
First, want to say thanks to Gremloe for that article that you sent me.
Okay.
I will definitely take a look at that. I'm surprised about how much has not changed, but yet has changed. Like superficially, things have changed. It's still the same old arguments that I was talking about in grad school. And then the third thing, which is a surprise, this wine called Free, alcohol-free wine. Oof, it's the best.
Didn't even realize they made non-alcoholic wine.
I know. I'm in love with it. I'm like, this is a game changer.
Isn't that what the Catholics drink?
No.
I mean, I don't know.
No. Okay.
Not any Catholics I know.
Okay. All right.
All right, I guess I'll add mine, and then we'll give Evo a chance to shout out his channel. I think at least my takeaway from this conversation. Yeah, I mean, I also kind of agreed. I just want to co-sign basically everything that's been said. I'm not really sure I have anything else additional to add. Like, at least for me, especially as someone who has literally dealt with other people going through the ritualistic scientific training that is getting a PhD who actually believe in these ideas. It's, I guess, heartening for me to see that there's at least a desire within these academic spaces to actually push back, because there have been times where it almost feels like, people around me are very much content to just do nothing. So I guess I could say, my takeaway from this is that it's heartening to see people who actually want to affect change, regardless of whether or not we're effective or otherwise. At least we're making an effort, and I'm very much grateful for that. Evo, go ahead and shout out your channel and anything else you want to plug.
Okay, so we talked about all of these, and I co-sign with everyone's thing, what you're saying. But let's make science hostile to people who want to make science hostile to others. That is that's really important. Like, if someone says, "Oh, privilege is a thing, we have to accept it," we should be able to say, "Fuck off. Yeah, we don't need you in science. We don't want you, and we don't respect you." Like, they should see some wrath that they don't want to deal with. And we should make sure that this is the attitude in science from now on. We are a welcoming society for people who are welcoming to others, not other people. That's the limit. And not like that I think that's what I want to say for like today's discussion in general. And as like, thank you for having me today. It was an amazing discussion. Like I enjoyed a lot. And
thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting me talk like without stopping me. You should stop me. It's like I won't let anyone talk.
No, you're entrancing is what it is. You're like, and very thoughtful too. You're a very kind soul.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm Evolozzy. If people call me Evo, I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm now starting a YouTube channel too. Like it's in the making. And you can find me on Twitch. Like my streams are very long. I do just marathons now. I go live in the day on Saturdays, and I just go until midnight. I cannot take it anymore. Like that's how I stream, and we do everything in one day. It's like I feel like I started to have make these plans too for the stream. I feel like I have a TV channel now, but all the programs are me.
It feels like that sometimes.
So that's how it is. So yeah, I just if you want to follow me, go follow me, and yeah, just tell people to fuck off. It's a good feeling. Like it's a really good feeling. Like we should be able to tell more people to fuck off our faces. You know, it's just we should be able to say that.
That's a good idea. I'm going to go down to the frat house I live next to and just read it there.
Respect.
It's good cathartic release. It really is.
Ditto. All right. We'll go ahead and call it there. Next week is going to also, I think, be very thought-provoking. We have a couple of folks in the sphere of journalism. We're going to be talking about a lot of responsible science journalism among other topics. So for those of us in the scheduling Discord, we'll go ahead and give you some more details as they roll in. But in the meantime, everybody in chat, I want to thank all of you for being here, for hanging out, listening to us talking, asking us some pretty salient questions to help make this entire experience better content for everybody tuning in, both now and in the future. I would, again, keep your eyes and ears peeled for next week, because that is going to be something that you definitely don't want to miss. I'm pretty sure, at the very least, Real Dan Cody is confirmed, and I want to say Constababble as well, if I remember correctly. So,
shut up.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Read and Rap has been putting in a hell of a lot of work behind the scenes, so God bless that human being.
Yes.
Yeah, shout out to Read and Rap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And may he have as many cougars as he pleases.
Yes.
No.
as many as will have him anyway.
Yeah.
True. Anyways, we'll go ahead and call it there. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight, and we'll be in touch about next week.
All right. Later, everybody.
All right, stay safe. Take care.